6 inches since she saw you last. So if you're comfortable with that, we'd love it. And like she mentioned, I really do love to be interrupted. So please feel free to ask questions throughout, or if you have a comment you'd like to throw in, feel free to unmute yourself and just say, hey, stop talking for a second. Let me say something. Or you can use like the hand up if that's something you're comfortable with, whatever works for you. I just want to make sure that we're getting all your questions answered. So thanks so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to be here with you. Like Jackie said, I'm Elaine Hing, and I'm a mental performance consultant with Elite Edge and with Canadian Sport Institute Calgary. And I'm so lucky to work with athletes every day from grassroots level all the way to Olympic and pro level. And it just makes me so content to be here with you and with Swim Alberta, because I know they've put together such an incredible program over the next couple of years. And they're really focusing a lot on your mental well-being and your mental health. So we're going to chat a bit today. I know we're a little bit spread out around the province. I'm coming to you from Treaty 7 and the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3 in Calgary here. And you're welcome to pop in the chat where you're joining me from. Thanks for coming. And I think Jackie mentioned to have a pen and paper ready. So if you don't have that, feel free to grab that now, and we'll get started. So what to expect today? We're going to talk a little bit about your mental wellness and comfort zones. I think we all have a different understanding of what comfort zones are. And we hear sort of some the same old, you only learn when you're outside of your comfort zone. We're going to dig into that today. We're going to do a little activity together. And since we have a smaller group today, I think we can be, nice and competitive. It can be kind of fun together, but don't worry, it's an easy activity. No skill required. We'll talk a little bit about some purposeful practice with our goals over the next little while. And of course, as always, I'll make sure you have some time for questions. Our last webinar focused on resilience. So if you weren't in that webinar live and you have not checked it out, you're welcome to go to the Swim Alberta website to find that. And you can watch either Erin or myself chat about resilience on that webinar, and that's about 60 minutes there. So really, we're going to dig into your mental wellness here. So gosh, where are we now? New restrictions. We're in such a unique time and place right now with everything going on. We're coming kind of winding down the school year as well. Some of you are going to have exams and maybe some extra stressors that come along with those exams. But as we wind down, we're coming into summer holidays, and we want to have this amazing, great, fun summer. But we know that it's tricky with some of these restrictions, and so many of you are just aching to be in the pool. I feel you. I would love to be with all of my training groups as well. So I certainly understand that. But we do want to make sure we're taking care of what we can control now, so that we're ready to go once we're able to start racing once more. So that really means getting into that performance mindset now and sort of taking care of our bodies and our brains and everything right now. So we're ready to hit the ground running. Okay. So we know we got to fuel our bodies so that we can perform well. But did you know that what you eat also impacts your brain too? So often we think about what we're eating in terms of just fueling our body, but it really does make a difference on our brain also. So we want to make sure that we're fueling and hydrating, eating and hydrating appropriately so we can get into that performance mindset quickly and a little bit more easily. Because as we know, it's pretty tough to be a competitive swimmer. There's a lot that goes into it. But if we can take care of some of these things, it's going to be easier for you once you get back into the water, right? So let's kind of tick some of the boxes and make sure we're taking care of this so your job down the road gets easier. As we know, physical training is a big piece of that, right? And of course, you've got some varied training sessions right now. Things look a little bit different for you. You're not in the water, you're doing some dry land stuff. You're probably doing some workouts at home, you're going for runs. So, follow the schedule that your coach has laid out for you, but we certainly encourage you to get outside and have some fun as well. Play Frisbee, kick a ball around, really try some new things and get outside and see if you can be active in new ways. And I had a conversation, my mental performance partner and I had a conversation with Jackie earlier in the week. And it was really interesting that she shared with us how so many athletes are actually improving, even though they're not in the water. And we're finding the same thing with a lot of other training groups too. So I work with long track and short track skaters, and they were off ice for so long. And what we're finding is when they're getting back on ice, even though they haven't been training the way they want to on ice, they seem to be a little bit faster and they seem to be doing pretty well. And I think that's really interesting because we're seeing that happen across a lot of sports. And a big piece of that is that physical training outside of the water. But a big part of that is your bodies are having time to heal that we don't always have time for, right? So I think there's a bit of a positive byproduct of all this. We're able to heal our bodies and to feel good. I'm just going to thanks, Jackie, for letting people in. That's as our doorbell goes, right? Sometimes I think it's my own door ringing. Thanks for letting them in there. So that's a really big one. And then I'm going to get to what I think is maybe the biggest one. Now, this is the one that changes everything. It's not, how we're dealing with the new restrictions. It's not how you hydrate and fuel. It's not we're dealing not the physical. Oh, we've got a bit of a, we mute there, or you getting feedback there, or? Yeah, if we're comfortable, just, we'll just have everyone mute. Unless you have a question, please unmute yourself and ask, that'd be great. Just limits the feedback there. That's great. So perfect. Thanks, Jackie. So this is the really big one. This is the one that changes everything. I've had some experiences with working with Olympic athletes who made a really small change in this area, and they noticed huge returns on their personal bests. Any guesses in the chat what we might be talking about? One area that you can change. It's not your nutrition or hydration. It's not that physical training. Any guesses in the chat? Anyone here have an idea what it could be? Let's see here. Oh, mindset. I like that. Yeah, because this is all moving together to get you in the right mindset, right? Yeah, mindset's such a big one. Great answer. Any other guesses of what this could be? This is like the big one. If you get this under control, yeah, Melina, Maria, sleep. Sleep is the big one here. We know that it's so important, right? So do we have an idea of how much sleep you should be getting for your age? We're kind of that 13, 14-year-old range here. Do you have an idea? And let me know in the chat if you could guess how many hours a night you should be getting. Let's see if we have any guesses. I wonder if we're getting the sleep that we should be getting. I know some of us aren't. I know sometimes I don't get the sleep I should get too. Okay, I guess is 10 hours, 8 to 12. Yeah, we've got some good brackets here. We're hoping for about that 9 to 11 hours of sleep. Yeah, I love this. Great guesses. Thanks for participating there. That's awesome. That's what we're really looking for, is that 9 to 11 hours. So we kind of want to think, who's getting enough sleep here? And if you're not, there's some little changes you can make that'll make a big difference for you. And some of these things that I do myself. And when we talk about what all the sleep experts say, they give us some really great tips. So we want to have a dark room, which is tricky living further up north in the summertime. We've got this beautiful sunshine early in the morning and late at night, and we're hopefully going to bed before it's completely dark out. But if we can have a nice dark room, maybe even some blackout blinds, or my personal favorite that I never go a night without, a good eye mask, a really comfy eye mask to put on your face, so that you don't have any light coming in. That's like my number one tip. And most of the Olympians and pro athletes I work with wear a night mask at night, because it's so hard to get your room really dark. And the sleep experts say that your room should be so dark for optimal sleep, it should be so dark that if you have your hand 1 foot in front of your face, you shouldn't be able to see it. Now, whose rooms are that dark? Most of ours aren't, right? We've got a little light on, a little light coming through the window from the street lights or elsewhere in the house, or some other things that glow in our room, clocks, things like that. So it's hard to get that really dark room, but I love a night mask. I wear one every single night. I don't work for them, but I'll plug you my favorite one is the Manta sleep mask, Manta. That is my favorite sleep mask because it's so comfy and I travel with it too. I never go anywhere without it. So a cool temperature is also really helpful. If you can be in a cooler room, that's really great to help fall asleep. If you feel like it's too cold, having your body temperature lowered, but having a pair of fuzzy socks on can be really helpful. That can help you to fall asleep too. Earplugs are something I really like as well. I always travel with earplugs when I'm with teams, and I end up handing them out to my athletes too, because, sometimes we have, maybe your parents get up really early. Maybe you have a sibling that snores or a dog that likes to sleep in your room that likes to snore. I happen to have my husband that likes to snore. So I like having earplugs at night too, sometimes to help me to fall asleep. But I also really like some nice background noise, like white noise can be nice to have sometimes. You can put on like sleep tracks as long as you're not looking at your phone that's across the room. Having a sleep track on can be really, really relaxing too. So as we're talking about those screens, our sleep experts recommend no screens for 2 hours before bed. Now, I wonder how realistic is that? I just saw Steve hang his head a little bit. How 2 hours before bed is tough to not have any screens at all sometimes. And I struggle with that too, because my phone is my alarm clock. It's my news. It's how I get all my sports updates and my world news. And so I have to try and be better at putting my phone away a little bit earlier. It's tricky. So if 2 hours, you find you're doing homework on a screen before bed, and now everyone's doing online school too, we do tend to have a lot of screens in our life. And sometimes for downtime, we just want to hang out and watch a TV show, right? So we know that a lot of our lives are screens. We just want to have better interaction with them. So you can get something called blue blocker glasses. You can usually get those for about like $30 online, and wear those for a couple hours before bed. That can help, reduce the negative impact of screens before bed. Because the bad thing about screens before bed, generally as we're getting tired throughout the day, we build up this hormone called melatonin in our body, and melatonin makes us nice and sleepy and helps us to fall asleep. But the bad thing about screens is that when we see a screen, our brain gets a little bit tricked and it thinks, oh, well, look at all this bright light. It's daytime. Let's get rid of all that sleepy time hormone. Let's get rid of that melatonin, flush it out. We got to stay awake because it's daytime. It's bright here. So our brains kind of get tricked into getting rid of our sleepy hormones. And then that means we don't fall asleep easy enough and we don't get into a nice deep sleep early on. So maybe 2 hours before bed isn't realistic for you. We're hopefully going to work towards that. But let's start with 30 minutes before bed and see how you do for a week or two. No screens 30 minutes before bed. And if you can crush that goal, let's make it 60 minutes. Let's make it 1 hour before bed, no screens. And then if you can do that, let's see if we can extend it even longer, right? So if your phone is your alarm clock, we're just going to set it a bit earlier, and we're going to put some of those things away or make sure we've got our blue blockers on. So we can really take care of a lot of that stuff before bedtime to help with us. So we'll start small and increase. We're not imagining that everyone is going to have a perfect bedtime routine overnight. We understand that that's not realistic, but we do know that little tiny goals that we can set and work on can really add up and make a big difference. And so sleep is one of those things. So we're going to try and get better and better about our sleep. And this is such a great goal for everybody, not even just athletes, but everybody. And one thing I love is having a bedtime routine. Now you have a pre-performance routine before you race, something that you always do right before you get in the pool. Well, I love when athletes have a bedtime routine as well. And if you don't have one yet, you can try one out and test it for a couple weeks and see how you do and tweak it until it's something that you really like. Once you're comfortable, you can add something different in there. So we want to have something in your routine, like some darkness, no screens, a cooler room if you can control that. But we can try other stuff too. I know a lot of athletes who use a bedtime alarm. They'll have an alarm set that goes off and reminds them, ding, 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 time to wind down and get ready for bed. Because sometimes We can be, maybe we're watching a Netflix show and we hit next episode when we know we should go to bed instead. That's something that I've done too. It's really good to be able to make sure we're getting that sleep, or you just really want to finish that homework project, but better sleep is going to be better for your brain. Having a bedtime alarm can be really good. And if it's about at half-hour time, so you can really wind down before bed, that can be awesome. So once your bedtime alarm goes off, you can do some deep breathing, get your PJs on, get ready for bed. Maybe you like to do some reading or journaling, whatever it might be. Some people love to do a bit of meditation or mindfulness right before bedtime. All of these things are awesome, but see what we can do for yourself for a bedtime routine. So if you want to set your alarm at night for a bedtime, that can be an awesome little goal to try out, and try it for a couple of weeks and see how you feel. And then this is another really important one, getting outside. And, Steve was telling us it's going to maybe snow later this week. Oh gosh, after this gorgeous sunshine, what is happening? That's not really what we want, is it? But, we want to make sure we're getting outside and getting some of that sunshine. So now you know what screens are doing to trick our brain into not sleeping, but there's something even more we can do about it. So yes, we want to stay away from those screens for about 2 hours, or we can wear those blue blocker glasses to help not flush that melatonin out. But did you know, if you get outside in natural daylight earlier in the morning, even if it's cloudy out, even if it's raining or snowing, if you get outside where there's natural daylight, the screens will impact you less in the evening, and you'll have a better quality of sleep. You're going to get into that REM sleep a little bit faster. REM is a stage of sleep where your brain's filing away everything it learned to help us remember things. That's when your body's repairing itself from that workout you did today. And we really love to get a bunch of REM sleep. So the earlier in the day that you get outside for natural light, the better it is for your sleep. So I think that's a really great goal to have. Ever since I learned that, I always have my morning coffee outside, even if it's cold out. Sometimes I'm bundled up in a winter jacket and I like to have my coffee out on my front step just so I can get some of that natural light, because we feel like it's light inside, but the outside light is so much more powerful that it really helps to impact our brains and our bodies. So that's what we're looking for. So I encourage you all to get outside early in the morning if you can. I usually like to either do my coffee outside or to do an early morning run so that I'm getting, some of that sunshine on my face. So I think that's a great goal. Now you got this slide in your newsletter, in your Swim Alberta newsletter. So we've covered most of it here, but if you want to screenshot it or scroll through your emails later and take a closer look at it, these are just a couple of tips from Believe Perform that Swim Alberta is partnered with that can really get you some awesome ideas on how to make your sleep even better. Okay, so feel free to screenshot or to scroll back in your newsletter. There's some great stuff there. Now, comfort zones. What do we know about comfort zones? Feel free to, this can be a bit of a tricky one. I'd love for you to answer in the chat or just unmute yourself. What do we know about comfort zones? Anything at all. There are no wrong answers. What do we know? Let's have some guesses here. What are some brainstorming about comfort zones? Are we shy? What do we know about comfort zones? Do we all have comfort zones? Do just certain people have comfort zones? Does it make life easier or harder? Why do we have comfort zones and what do we know about them? Any ideas? Well, looks like we've got some shy viewers today, but that's okay. I'll jump into it. And if you come up with anything, you're welcome to unmute anytime, okay? So really, we know that our comfort zones feel safe. It's really comfortable, just like the word says, right? It helps us to feel safe. And a lot of people say that comfort zones are almost like a security blanket, really comfortable for us to have, and it makes us feel safe to have them. Oh, I see a couple of in the chat here. Oh, yes. Thanks, Bart. Exactly. A place to feel safe, exactly where we're at. Thanks for your answer there. That's great. Yeah, it makes us feel safe. It's sort of, it really is like that security blanket. We like it, and it's hard to step outside of our comfort zone, right? We don't really love that because when we feel safe and comfortable in something, why would we want to leave it? It's kind of doesn't make much sense to want to leave it, right? We know for sure that it takes less effort if we're in our comfort zone. It doesn't take quite so much effort, or it's easier for us to stay inside of it. We know that we love to have control. I mean, if we're all honest, we love control, right? And there's a lot of great things that we can control about our brain and our bodies. So having control can be a really, really good thing. We love having it, but it can be tricky when we lose control. And sometimes when we're outside of our comfort zone, we feel like we don't have that control anymore. So that gets pretty tricky for us. We know for sure that change is hard, but we know that we learn a little bit less and we don't grow as much when we don't let change happen. So it feels really safe and it's easier, but change can be hard and we don't quite learn as much. Of course, we like routine. Athletes love routine. You guys are so good at routine. I think in general, as humans, we really thrive on routine, but athletes in particular are really great with routines. Think of how you warm up, what you usually do for a warm up. Think about your pre-performance routine right before you hop into the pool for a race. Think about your cool down and your stretching, and everything that you like to do tends to have routine around it. Even how you get dressed in the morning or a certain way you brush your teeth. We like to have routines, again, because they're comfortable, they make us feel safe, and it can be a little bit easier sometimes, right? But our comforts changed a little bit with COVID, right? Our security blankets kind of been ripped away a little bit. It feels sort of different. We don't necessarily feel as comfortable all the time, but it's really easy to go with what we feel good about. So in times of uncertainty and times where we kind of think like, times are strange, we don't know what's going on, just like COVID, we like even more control than usual, right? So when there's stuff going around outside that we don't quite understand or we're not really happy or comfortable about, we like to have more control. That makes us feel more comfortable, right? So I think a comfort zone is really like a bubble. And I think probably most of you have heard you learn your best when you're outside of your comfort zone, right? Has everyone heard that before? You learn your best when you're outside of your comfort zone. There's no growth in your comfort zone. But I kind of want to challenge that a little bit, because when we get so far out of our comfort zone, we get really scared and really nervous. And being really, really, really scared is not the best way to learn all the time, right? It's okay to have fear and to learn and grow, but we don't want to intentionally be so far out of our comfort zone we don't know what we're doing. So that doesn't really help us too much. But what we do want to do is imagine our comfort zone is like a bubble surrounding us. And instead of popping that bubble and jumping out and being scared, what we want to do is just push out on that bubble a tiny bit. We just want to stretch it out a little bit from the sides, not jumping way out of it, but just pushing it out a little bit. So, if I have a choice of stroke to work on, I'm probably going to choose my best one, right? I think most of us would do that, right? We want to choose what we're best at. I always did that. I swam for the dinos a million years ago when I was your age. And when we had free time to choose our stroke, I always chose my best one for sure, because it feels good to be good at something, right? But I think that's really staying inside my bubble, and that's not pushing out my bubble at all, right? But what if I chose to work on the stroke I'm least comfortable with? That would be me pushing my bubble out and just stretching it a little bit more around me so that my bubble is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So my comfort zone gets bigger and I'm learning and growing. So I worked with a golfer when he was a teenager, and he's now in the States, in the PGA. And I remember years ago, he hated golfing in the rain. He hated it so much, he would cancel his tee times when it was raining. He didn't want to train in the rain. And he knew, we talked about it, and he knew that he was going to have to learn to golf in the rain. So what we did for 3 years straight, every time it rained and he didn't have golfing booked, he would either go to the range or get a tee time. And boy, he didn't love it. He didn't love it for a long time, but it sure paid off, because now every time there's a tournament and it rains, he knows that he's going to be better than most of the people he's golfing against, because he really worked on stretching that comfort zone. He hated golfing in the rain, and he really worked on pushing that bubble out and out and out until he got really good at it. So I encourage you to choose that as well. It really helps to turn our weaknesses into our strengths. And again, we love when we're good at something, right? Don't we all love that so much? It's a really good feeling to be really good at a certain skill. So if we can work hard through a skill we're not as good at, we can really turn that weakness into a strength. And it can feel so good, and it can help our confidence so much in the end. It's a pretty cool thing to be able to do. Okay, so we're going to do an activity if we're ready for that. So we would love if, I'm just going to take a peek here. We would love to have your cameras on for this activity if you're comfortable with that. That would be awesome. And what we're going to do is get your pen and paper ready. And what we're going to do is a really easy activity, okay? So this is not something you need to have any training in, nothing you need to know how to do beforehand, nothing like that. But we're going to be a little bit interactive with each other. You can answer in the chat or you can unmute. So get your pencil and paper ready, your pen and paper. It's not something to put into your phone. We want you actually writing it out, okay? And what we're going to do is write down numbers. That's it. Really, that's it. That's as easy as this challenge is going to be. But we're going to challenge you to write down some numbers, okay? And I'm going to time you. And that's all we're going to do. Start with 1, write number 2, write number 3, write number 4. You don't have to do the commas or anything like that. And I have 45 seconds here, but since I'm chatting so much, I think I'm going to change it to 30 seconds. I'm going to time you for 30 seconds. Don't start yet. I'm going to time you and see how many numbers you can write starting from 1 in 30 seconds. Do we have any questions about this before we get started? Do you all think I'm bonkers because I'm going to get you to write down numbers? Okay, so get your pens and your pencils ready, and I will start you at the 30 seconds in a moment. And when I say stop, that's pencils down and hands in the air, okay? So that's when we know we're done. On your marks, starting at 1, get set, go. I see people furiously writing. Keep going. And stop, pens down, hands in the air. Okay, how did we do? Put your number in the chat. What is the number you got to on your piece of paper? Now again, okay, we got a few here. 34, 40, 44, 31, 31, 29. Love it. Love all these numbers. There you go. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so that was 30 seconds. Now, we're going to do this one more time, okay? Oh, 37 and 30. Thanks for joining together and letting us know. Love it. We're going to do this again, but here's the catch. You have to beat your last score by at least one number, okay? I'm not going to give you any more time. It's still going to be exactly 30 seconds, but you have to beat your last score by at least 1. So Tanya, you had 29, you have to at least get 30. Cheyenne, you had 31, you have to at least get 32. We're going to make sure you are beating your score by at least 1. Are we ready to do it? On your marks, get set, go. We're halfway there. Keep going. And stop. Pens down, hands in the air. Okay, good stuff. Okay, I think I might have given you like a little bit less time. I guess when I stopped my clock and set it, it wasn't quite, can you see? It wasn't quite there yet, but so hopefully I didn't mess you up too much. Now let's see how you did. We'll open the chat here. Who beat their score? Okay, yeah, you got +1. There we go. 335, 39. Whoa, that's a big jump. Holy smokes, a few of you had a big jump, 39 and 35. Wow, okay. 34. Wow, did everybody beat their last score? Okay, it looks like everyone beat their last score. So, okay, did anybody change up their technique at all? Did anyone try something different? Okay, Steve, what did you do differently?
What I did, I went through the normal 1 through to 10, but then I just continued doing the single digits 2 through 20, and then I went back and very quickly just did 1 1 1 1 1 in front of the digits. I did exactly the same for 2 and exactly the same for 3, but I kind of screwed up a bit, and I should have done better than I did.
Okay. I love that you were creative though. You tried something new. You're going, okay, I want to beat this. I'm going to try something new. Anyone else try something different this time?
I didn't think as hard about it because I noticed that I went slower when I like really thought. I was like, oh yeah, you got it right 1, 2, but when you kind of just count in your head, you just
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for sharing. I know so often people will say, I wrote up and down. I wrote vertical the first time. And the second time I wrote almost like I was writing a sentence. I went left to right on the page horizontally. So some people switch some things up. Other people might have done the exact same thing. So that's okay if you change your technique. And of course, we want to know, why did you beat your first score? I actually accidentally gave you a little bit less time the second time there, which is a bit of a mistake, but it was very, very, very close. Why do you think that you beat your first score? Any guesses? Maybe it was the technique that you changed. Any guesses as to why you might have beat it?
probably maybe because your brain without noticing it, you like switch mindsets. You first went like, oh well, she just wants us to write numbers and just I'll see how far I can go. I'm not gonna try. But then once the challenge was set, your brain's like, oh yeah, we can do this. We can go like 1 more. It's easy to change.
Oh, absolutely. And would you say that you were like really comfortable in your bubble the first time and the second time you were pushing it a little bit? Like it was like,
Yeah.
I have to try harder. I have to really go. Okay. Emelina, Miria say you knew your goal. Absolutely. You're both right here. We knew your goal. We set a goal. And I think one of the biggest things with goal setting is that we really have to know where you are to know where you can go. Right. So if I asked you all this question before we started, if I give you 30 seconds, how many numbers can you write? We would have had some pretty weird answers because this is not something you've probably done before. So I think a lot of people would have gone, I don't know, 12, 55, who knows? We wouldn't have had a clue. So it's tricky to know really where you need to go and what your goal is going to be until you know where you're at now. So what can I do now? And then how can I push that to be a little bit better and to work myself a little bit harder and to really get there, right? So it's tricky that we don't necessarily know where we're going the first time, but if we allow ourselves to recognize it and set out a plan, something that's really realistic, we can almost always beat it. And I think this was pretty realistic because the challenge was beat your goal by 1, right? At least 1. That's all you had to do. Now, if I had said beat your goal by 10, do you think that would have been very fair? I don't think that's really realistic either, right? Not really fair, not very realistic. And eventually you might be able to get there. But really, for this first time, it was just to beat it by a little bit. And I think that's pretty great. Now, if we beat it by 1 or by 4 the second time, I'm not going to expect you to beat it by 4 again the next time, right? And I think that sometimes we do that when we think about our swimming times. We get a personal best and then we instantly want to break our personal best, right? We want to beat that. We want to crush that record and get higher, but we need some consistency, don't we? I think we need some consistency first. But it's funny that we don't necessarily know where we're at. So, why do we really not often reach for those goals that we want to hit? Do we do this in school too? Do we do this sometimes in our friend groups, or do we do this and say in school, I don't think I'm going to do very well on that test, or maybe you're waiting for your test mark to come back and you think, I didn't do very good, or I probably bombed it, and then you get it back and you're kind of surprised that you actually did okay. We kind of feel like we don't really go for those goals we know or we think we can reach, or the ones that we can probably hit, because it's sort of like a safety net for us. And I mean, who here is afraid of failure? I think a lot of us are in different ways, because we don't love to fail, do we? We just talked about how much we love when we're good at an activity. We love when we achieve something. It feels really good and our confidence goes up. It feels so good to be good at something. So when we know there's a chance we're not going to do very well, that's kind of hard on us. And we kind of shy away from those challenges sometimes. We like to sometimes make excuses for it, and other times we just sort of shy away. So that fear of failure is really, really common right now. And you haven't had a competition in quite a while. So you might feel a little bit rusty. You might feel a bit unsure about your abilities for when you're getting back in the water. But I do want to assure you that you're not the only ones feeling like this. All the athletes that I'm working with, a lot of them are having these feelings too. And we know for sure that some of these athletes are not necessarily pushing themselves to grow and learn and improve at this time. So I'm pretty sure it's probably happening with our swimmers here too, right? I think that would be pretty common and pretty easy to say, since a lot of athletes are going through that kind of feeling. I bet a lot of you are too. So what we want to do is we want to make sure we're going for those goals, those realistic goals, and we're stretching our bubble just a little bit so we can help to grow our comfort zone and really make us better swimmers overall, right? That's something that we want to do. So what we want to do is have some purposeful practice. So we firstly want to be really intentional. And who has ever just gone through the motions before? I have done that before. I did that when I was in your shoes as a dyno when I was 12 years old, 13, 14 years old. There were so many times that I just did a workout or did some laps without really being intentional about it, just to get it done, right? But we really want to make sure we're being more intentional instead of just going through the motions. And a really great way to do that is to set a goal. So if you set a goal at the beginning of that training session, whether it's when you're back in the water, or whether it's going for a nice easy jog or going for a run, and maybe you're working on beating your time, but maybe you're just really working on your form while you're running, having a good running technique so you can make sure you're lowering your chance of injury. So it's not always about beating a time and getting faster. Sometimes it's really about taking care of your body. And when we talk about these realistic goals, this might be your bedtime routine. What's a realistic goal for you? Am I going to set my wind down clock for, my bedtime routine for 8:30 alarm going off so I can really start winding down so I'm in bed after 9? That might be a good wind down time for you. That could be a good realistic goal to set. So set some times that work for you, right? And of course, when you're working on your physical goals, ask for your coach's help on this. They really do want to make sure you're getting what you need, and they want to help support you through this, right? And of course, being purposeful, being intentional really helps us to stay on track. It helps us to not sort of go by the wayside and forget about training for a little bit, which I'm sure is easy to do sometimes when you're at home. But it can be really helpful for us to stay on track with our goals so that we're achieving things even faster. And what can be really great is if we're being purposeful, we can tell our friends and teammates and family and coaches about it, because the more we share with others, the more accountable we're held. Because then a teammate might say, hey, remember, we were going to work on our cardio. We're going to work on our running form. So we need to make sure, did you go for a run today? We can check in on each other and make sure we're doing what we need to do. Did you do the stretching that coach told us to do today? Let's make sure we're really sharing and communicating with each other so that we can support each other, but hold one another accountable too. And of course, as we're being purposeful, we want to celebrate success because it feels so good when we accomplish these hard things. And that's what's really, really awesome. We want to celebrate your success and the success of your teammates too. So the more you share and communicate with each other, the more successes you can all share in together to really help to raise that confidence too. It feels good when we do hard things. And I would love to introduce you, before we start to wrap up today, about some goal windows. Now, remember, this is really all about your purposeful practice and chatting to your coaches about what kind of goals you want. But remember, we have different kinds of goals. We have process goals and outcome goals. Outcome goals are things like, your time. So what's your personal best time? That's an outcome goal. But a process goal says, what do I need to actually do to get that time, right? It's all the work that we put in. So you might have an outcome goal in your mind, but what we really have to dig into is that process goal. What do we need to do? And once we have those target goals, we can say, how do I need to achieve them? What are the steps I need to take? And really, it's about consistency. And I think that I bet that some of you on this call have done this too, right? When we talked about early in our call, when we hear that athletes want to beat their most recent PB, if you've only hit it once, why do we think that we can beat our PB every single time that we race instead of getting some consistency, right? It seems a little bit silly when we talk about that. And I have a lot of other kinds of athletes that kind of want that too. Lots of like long track speed skaters that think, well, I got that time last time, now I have to beat it. But if they've only got that time once, why on earth do they think they can beat it just that fast? We want some consistency. So you've built up those really great times and you're getting a bunch of times right around the same. And then we're of course still working on getting stronger and faster and beating those times. But we want to be good to yourself. We want to have that self-compassion. We want to understand that consistency is great. We don't have to beat those times every time, because if you think your goal is to beat your PB every single time, you're going to be disappointed a lot. And a lot of disappointment can add up, and that can be pretty tricky, right? So focus on consistency, and then we focus on how to improve, okay? So for any coaches on our call too, this can be a really great way to do a quick check-in or a debrief, and you can put whatever language you want in these 3 boxes. And every athlete is really, really different. And that's kind of the cool part about this exercise. That's why we love it. You're not comparing yourself to other people. You're just in comparison to yourself, okay? So some people like to add times in these 3 boxes. You can do that too. Sometimes you want to unpack some of those times with questions to say, what do I need to do to achieve that middle window? What does that look like? What does it feel like to get a time I'm okay with? And when I have consistency here in the middle, what does it look like to start reaching for that top window, that personal best? What does that look like? And if you land in that box below, like slower than I'd like to be, what does that look like? And what do you think you need to do to achieve the time that you're okay with, the time that we're working on that consistency with, right? So you can put whatever language you want in these 3 boxes. But just remember, it can be really tricky when we just have numbers in here. We want to kind of unpack those a little bit and recognize, what is it going to take for me to be consistent? And then with that consistency, how can I get better, faster, and stronger moving forward? That's really what we're looking at. So instead of having these exact numbers that we always need, what are you okay with? And then what are we reaching for? If you happen to land in that bottom box that's much slower than you'd like, or much slower than you thought you would be, what do we need to do to change to kind of bump you up to the next box? And that can be all the things we started with earlier. Maybe it's your your nutrition and your hydration and that physical training and taking care of your body with your stretching and rolling and all that body work. Maybe it's how you're targeting your sleep and making sure you're getting the extra sleep you need, getting outside in the daylight. It can be all those kinds of things that really make a difference to help you get from slower than you'd like to a time you're comfortable with, and hopefully eventually those personal bests along the way. And I hope that that makes sense on these goal windows here. But feel free to play with that and put whatever words and times you need in those 3 boxes there, okay? So I just want to wrap us up here before questions with encouraging you to empower yourself. I want to challenge you to push that bubble out just a little bit, stretch that bubble. We're not going to pop it and jump all the way outside. We're just going to stretch it a bit. And of course, ask your coaches how you can do this together in a safe, but also fun and exciting way, because your coaches are really creative people too. And you can work together and put both of your brains together to make things really fun for you as well. So, we've got nothing to lose. We want to go for it. We want to push that bubble out a little bit, make your comfort zone instead of here. We want to make it really nice and wide. And, not being in competition is actually the best time to try new things that are going to help us learn and grow. So even though you all would love to be in the pool right now, not having competition and not having pool time is the best time to try all these new things, because you have a bit more time to do it. So remember why you're swimming. Think about why you love it, why you stick with it, and enjoy the piece of it. That's the fun part, right? All that training, but push that bubble out a little bit and see if you can empower yourself to make those small changes that are going to add up to the big ones. Of course, recharging our battery right now is a big piece of that. Your bodies are healing. It's pretty awesome to see a lot of people when they are in the pools across different provinces, that they are hitting some good times because they've had some of that downtime and they're really anxious to get in the pool, and you want to just go, 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 and you get in there, which is so fun and exciting. But really focus on getting into that mindset and getting your body in the place you want it now, so that when you get to the pool, you're going to feel really awesome. That's our goal here today. And if you have any questions, I would love to hear